The views expressed in this episode are those of the guest and not necessarily those of myself and the Tristan Law Show. Welcome to the Tristan Law Show, where I introduce you to the personalities in and out of the pro wrestling ring. The unique part is you don't have to be a pro wrestling fan to enjoy this podcast. Welcome back, and welcome to episode 18. If it's your first time here, I just want you to keep in mind that new episodes drop on Wednesdays. Here's a question for you. Have you ever looked at a YouTube channel and wondered how they've got thousands of followers? Okay, here's another. What happens when you hit a certain amount of YouTube subscribers? Okay, fine. Here's one more. What do you need to start your own YouTube channel? This episode, all those questions and more will be answered as I have Dave Lee, the host of YouTube channels Dave Knows Wrestling and Dave Knows Comics. Since this is a pro wrestling related podcast, we will focus more on Dave Knows Wrestling. And he has over 30,000 followers there. If you're a YouTuber, a little curious on how YouTube works, or you want to start your own YouTube channel, well, stick around, because when I get back, I'll be accompanied by Dave Lee of Dave Knows Wrestling. I'm Tristan Law, and this is the Tristan Law Show. Welcome back to the Tristan Law Show, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. My next guest at this time, man, I met this guy at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting where he taught when I used to hang out there once a week for a previous project. This guy has over 30,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel, Dave Knows Wrestling. He's a comedian. He's a pro wrestling historian and an on-air personality for Catalyst Wrestling. Oh, and did I mention that he's a YouTube guru? At this time, I'd like to introduce my friend and White Castle partner in crime, Dave Lee. Dave, what's going on? Welcome to the Tristan Law Show. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. And yeah, it's been a while since we had White Castle. Just talking about that the other day. I can't even remember last time we actually got to go, and I haven't gone since. I haven't gone without you. But waiting for that.
I can't say that I've not gone without you, but that's not the point. That's not the point. I mean, the last time we've seen each other in person was maybe in March?
Yeah, maybe. If not, yeah, before
February or something like that. But you still look the same to me. And I'm glad that you've taken some time out of your busy schedule to hang out with me today. So what's new with you? What's going on?
Just living in the isolation dream. Been working on the YouTube channel, as you were so kind of mentioned, Dave Knows Wrestling. Been putting a lot of work into that. Really not a whole lot else to do. And surprising myself with how little I can accomplish in 5 months. There are movies and TV shows I meant to watch that I didn't even get to. It's like, I don't got the time. I'm doing pretty much nothing for 5 months. I couldn't figure out a half hour to an hour to watch certain things. I started 2001 Space Odyssey. Never seen it. Film classic. Still got like 2 hours left. And it's a long movie, man.
How long is it? I've never watched it.
It's like 2 hours and change, but I'm in the first like third. I was like, man, all right, this is interesting, but nah, I'm just going to sit. And I don't know where the time goes. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just the sun goes up and it goes down. I'm like, what did I do?
You know, that's what they say, Dave. Like when you were a kid, days seem to go by so much slower when you were a kid because as a kid, you had no real concept of time. You never really had nothing to do. But as an adult, your time goes by quicker because we constantly look at our time because there are things that we have to do at a certain time every single day. But Dave, before we go into anything else, I know that I've talked to you before, and I know that you are a product of the Bronx just like me, so I have to hit you with my 2 Are You From the Bronx questions. And Dave, I've given these to other people before on the show, and when they answer the questions, I can tell that they're really from the Bronx. So Dave, are you ready for my Are You Really From the Bronx?
I'm ready. Okay. Is that the first question? Because the answer is yes.
Okay, fine then. Okay, fine. 3 questions, Dave. Three. Okay, question number 2. If you're really from the Bronx, where is the best place to get a gyro in the Bronx?
Oh, see, I'm the wrong person to ask. I'm not the biggest gyro guy.
You know, I asked Ariella Nix that same exact question as well, too, and she said she's not a big gyro person, but when I told her the answer, she kicked herself in the butt and said, man, I should have said what you said. So I'm going to give you an opportunity. You may not be a gyro guy, but guess. If somebody asked you, where is the best place to get a gyro in the Bronx, where would you tell them to go?
I would jokingly say Miro's.
You're wrong. That's wrong.
I know.
The correct answer is Gyro King on Fordham Road.
Yes.
See, that's what she did.
College, that's right. Yeah,
she had the
right.
same exact. She had the same exact reaction as well too.
Yeah.
Okay, so
the thing is, well, not only that, but I'm not the biggest. I don't really hang around for. I've never really hung around Fordham. Like I know where it is, but I just never really spent any time around there for whatever reason.
Okay, so you know, I'll give you a free pass on that one. Let me give you the second question.
And technically, I got the first one right, so I'm like 50-50 right now.
Fine. That one was like that first question, are you ready, was more like put your name on the test to get credit. So, okay, fine, we'll give you that. All right, fine.
Count it if it goes.
So here's the next question. Dave, if you're really from the Bronx, when is the best day to go to the Bronx Zoo?
Not Sunday. How's that?
Okay, so what's the best day?
Tuesday.
No, Dave, the answer is Wednesday because it's free.
Oh, well, I guess I failed this round. Now,
Damn. All right.
Granted, I haven't lived in the Bronx since I was 5, but still.
All right. You know what? You get a free pass. Okay, so congratulations. You're really from the Bronx then because you didn't really grow up in the Bronx, so you wouldn't really know those answers to those questions. So, all right, fine. But anyway, Dave, I mentioned that you were a YouTube guru and you create content for Dave Knows Wrestling, and you also have another YouTube page as well, too, Dave Knows Comics. So yes. I urge all my listeners, whether you like comics or whether you like wrestling, go ahead and look for Dave Knows Wrestling or Dave Knows Comics. If you like comics, find one. If you like wrestling, find the other. If you like both, God bless America. Dave, what inspired you to begin creating content for YouTube?
Well, I'll put it this way. I've seen a lot of things throughout my time that got me into it, so it's hard to pick just one. Mostly, when I started, I was watching a lot of YouTube channels. It was slowly replacing regular TV for me, and I really started to like all this content that I was seeing. And at the same time, I graduated from broadcasting school, and I started realizing that, hey, you could actually make money off of this. And I saw that I had the resources. I saw the content. I also had just gotten published on Cracked.com.
What's that?
Cracked.com. It's a magazine. It was a magazine, and now it became an online website. And then they started a YouTube channel, and they started doing a lot of. It's a humor-based website. The YouTube channel went away for a little bit, and then now it's coming back. But Cracked was a very funny website and YouTube channel as well. And so that was when I got published on there. So I got published with one article, and I also had a column published. And so everything was lining up. So Cracked, very, very popular YouTube channel. I got published on the regular website. So a lot of things were lining up. I had the resources, I had the know-how. So I decided to give it a shot and see where we could go from here.
Huh. So why YouTube of all places?
Well, a lot of people ask me that even now, because there are a lot of other virtual platforms out there. And I don't want to sound like a shill for the parent company or nothing like that. But for me, I typically just believe that YouTube is the place to go. I understand that there is Twitch. There are other venues that you could do to make money. Yeah, you could go on Instagram. There's other things you could do as well to try and bolster your income and be a content creator. But the way I look at it is, despite I know people have complaints about YouTube or some people criticize YouTube, but there's also a lot of disinformation out there. There's a lot of things that people say that's just straight up not true about what you can or cannot do. And the reality is, if you do your homework, you do the research, and YouTube is very open with you about it. I've had very good experiences with working with them. For me, it's going, even if there are down phases, YouTube is owned by Google. Plus, YouTube is now, if I'm not mistaken, the #1 search engine in the world, ahead of Google, from my understanding. So more people use that as a search engine than anything else. And it's partnered with Google anyway. So for me, they're going to come out on top. If they have a rough patch, they will shoot through it. They will get through it. So I looked at it as it was the #1 platform, in my opinion. So that's where I wanted to go.
So, Dave, what are some of the rumors people have heard about YouTube for it not being a good place to to place content. So dispel those rumors right now, at least one of them.
Okay, well, this is a recent one. Now, I'm not an expert per se. I just know what I know from just common sense and just talking to other people. Perhaps there's wrong, but there's some people out there who believe you cannot mention or even mention a certain wrestling company, or else your entire channel will be instantaneously deleted without question, like that.
Oh, wow. Oh.
The rumor is you cannot mention New Japan at all.
Why not? Do they own YouTube?
That they say that because there's a lot of conflicting articles. There's people talking about one thing, and misinformation. It's a lot of people oversimplifying things. But it eventually boiled down to a rumor, because there were some things about happening 5 years ago with YouTube Red. There were some things that happened over here, some things went down there, and people saying, I don't understand Japanese law or whatever like that. Nobody gets nothing. And in the end, they boil it down to a very oversimplified answer. And it led to this rumor that you can never mention. If you even say New Japan, show one picture, you instantaneously get your channel deleted. Now, there are people who have apparently been affected by this, and I'm sorry for anyone who has. I don't know any of these people. I don't know their channels, and evidently I can't find them if I wanted to. But I've heard conflicting stories. I've heard people say that it's because they were airing too much footage from matches. Now that you can't do. And
right, because you don't own the content, right?
Right. And so some people have said it was about that. So there might be some people who believe their channel got deleted for X, Y, and Z, but really it was because of A, B, and C, maybe X too, and Y. But it was really a combination of reasons. And plus, furthermore, there are other content creators on YouTube who have used images from New Japan, talk about New Japan, and it has even been critical of New Japan. And nothing's ever happened to them. Not even a warning or a strike or anything like that. They're perfectly fine. So, while I understand that the people who believe these rumors really, really believe them, I'm saying I don't see any evidence to support that, because there's a lot more evidence, physical evidence, to prove the contrary than the word of mouth or what people say out there.
So, Dave, if somebody wants to create their own YouTube channel, which steps would you provide them with to start their journey?
Oh, geez. I would say don't think that this is as simple. Well, okay. It depends on who's asking. Is the person asking a pretty girl?
I don't know.
I will say that you have to kind of go with go with your strengths. People love clicking on videos of pretty girls. It tends to give them a leg up. So, and I have seen some women who bravely are very attractive, but they choose not to put themselves on camera because they don't, for whatever reason. And so, good for them. I will say that. But I will say, if you're trying to get, if you want to lead with your strengths and you happen to be an attractive female, that kind of helps you in one regard. But again, you don't have to do it. But it's just something I've noticed that is a leg up, is an advantage I don't have. But play to your strengths. So for me, when I first started, I had a lot of different ideas about what I want to do. Wrestling just happened to be the one that I got the most content out of.
Right.
And it's something that I know I could rattle on and on about forever. Also, make content that you would be happy to watch. Don't think about, I have to do Five Nights at Freddy's or Fortnite videos because that's what everyone has to do. Now, sure, you're probably, or it's probably in your best interest to do that at some point. If you're going to make like a gaming channel, you probably should cover things that are more attractive and more appealing and more on there. But don't feel that you necessarily have to. Don't think about that first. Think about what you would enjoy. And it's like, if I have to talk about Fortnite, or maybe I should give it a chance, see what is there to say about Fortnite that no one else has said, or so on and so forth. If we're just going to make a video about Fortnite like everybody else, then they can watch anybody else. Why should they watch yours over anybody else's? And there are a lot of people out there who can make the same content as similar content to what's already out there, and they might do very well. But in my opinion, it's in your best interest to do something slightly different and make sure that it's, above all else, something you would enjoy watching.
To my listeners, once upon a time, I needed help with YouTube, and you, Dave, urged me to go into YouTube. And these were some of the things that you told me about the show that I was doing at the time. What you said to me is, what makes you different from every other show out there? And
Right.
the answer that I had to it was like, there wasn't really an answer. What made us different was the dynamic between myself and the other host, and I was supposed to exacerbate that and make that be known, because that's what's going to make people listen to the show and watch the show on YouTube. They don't care about us talking about pro wrestling that happened a week ago, because it's already happened. But if we take the topics like everybody else is not doing and talk about the topics, drill on the topics, and add our personalities in there, that's going to make people more interested in there. So I agree, because that's helped even for creating this podcast. Dave, I talk about you in my introduction episode, and I say that, you were one of the people that urged me to go ahead and do this, and you also helped me figure out what I was going to make the show about. What's going to make this show different than everybody else? And I know what makes this show different from everybody else. It's me and my personality. But what further makes this show different, this podcast different from everybody else's podcast, is that I'm not talking to people about wrestling. Like, yeah, we're going to talk about wrestling, Dave, but I make this podcast so that anybody can pick it up. Is it for the wrestling fan? Yes. But is it for somebody who just goes, oh, what's this? Let me listen. They're going to be able to enjoy it as well, too. So I don't alienate everybody. Everybody's here. What's the most important aspect of maintaining a YouTube page as a creator?
Great question. Now, that changes from time to time. There's a lot of things about YouTube that, again, people don't 100% understand. And I'm not even saying that I fully understand it. There's a good chance that I get things wrong. But when it comes to YouTube, there's multiple things. A lot of people tend to know about the algorithm, the mysterious algorithm, what YouTube uses to perpetuate what suggestions it has versus what kind of gets lost in the background. It's hard to figure out. It's a big computer program, so a regular mortal mind has a hard time figuring out. And again, it changes throughout time. For me, again, this is what I do, and maybe I'm not the best person to ask, but for my taste, I only quasi listen to the algorithm. So I try not to be a slave to it, because it would drive me crazy trying to figure out. And I did in the beginning. So I would tell people, when you want to maintain your video, do pay attention to the algorithm. Do look at your analytics. Again, it goes back to the make content that you're happy with, make content that makes you different. Look at them. And what I do is I tend to do a trade-off. Sometimes I'll do an episode that I know is going to be pretty big, it's pretty commonplace, and a lot of people are going to be interested in it. And then I will do content that's just for me, or, maybe not everyone, this is not everyone's cup of tea, but the people who watch it, who get it, are probably going to be into it. I diversify it. I switch it up. I do one for the masses, then I do one for me. And that's how I break it up. But even the ones for the masses, I try to make it more towards my point of view and more something I would enjoy. I just try to make it about a topic that's pretty hot. So I would say that, and also consistency. Consistency, I think, is kind of easing up a little bit, but usually the rule is do content once a week, at least. Multiple times a week if you can. Some channels have thrived off of doing once a month, or having an irregular schedule, if you will.
Right.
But if you look at the majority of the channels out there, they typically do best when you have a constant, reliable source at least once a week, usually around the same time, usually around the same day of the week. When you come out with that consistency, people will start being able to incorporate you into their routine. They'll start making you a part of their business week, saying, oh, great, this show came out this day. Oh, what time is it? Oh, well, that's time for, this show. It's time for Dave Knows Wrestling. And I hope a new video's out. Oh, look, there's one there. And they'll start incorporating, just getting used to a rhythm. So if you could do at least once a week, I would say that's probably best for you.
That's one of the things I did as well too when I started the Tristan Law Show, is that's one of the advice that you've given me before. It's to be consistent, and new episodes here release every Wednesday, because I have people that text me or message me on social media and go, oh my God, this week's episode was so great. Or I didn't know that about that person, or I liked how they talked about this. Set everybody's expectation now. What's the hardest thing about creating a YouTube channel?
Dealing with the bad viewers. I don't want to say viewers, because a lot of people just say, oh, the viewers are terrible. But the reality is most of them are pretty good. But those rough ones, they do take a lot of your attention. And they're treacherous, just purely treacherous. And I will also say I'm pretty fortunate, because the know-it-all nation, as I like to call them, those in the know, the subscribers, the fan base that I have, they're really cool because I think the thing that sets my channel apart being a more looking at things from a more intelligent aspect. We try to do things every once in a while. We'll do things like I take a lot of wrestling history or outside wrestling concepts and incorporate them into a wrestling context. And that kind of fan base is great because you get more intellectual fans. You get people who are interested in things and they come from a more intellectual background or tend to be more curious. And because of that, I'm fortunate enough to have a fan base that's not so rough. But nevertheless, there's always going to be that contingency. There's always going to be that small group of people who are just there to troll you, or they're just there to take you down, or they mishear what you say and then argue against points you're not even making. And those, they make it impossible for me. I just recently actually started backing off because for the beginning of the channel, I was responding to just about every comment. 90% of the comments I would respond to is a rough guess. I would respond to people. If they left a comment, I would talk to them, no matter how old the video was. Social media on the Twitter, as I was talking to people, but I'll be honest, I'm at with the current situation and everything, I'm at a threshold where I decided, nope, that's it, I'm done. And so just really recently I said, no, I had enough. And so I still read the comments. I respond very, very rarely, but I decided going forward for my own mental health, I probably need to back off on this because these guys are going to drive me crazy. And again, it's just a small percentage of it, but they can be rough. I remember I was a guest on one show, and I was a special guest on the show, which I was very happy about, very excited about. It was a great experience working with it. And then I read the comments. It was still a great experience, but reading the comments, the things about me, 50% of it was either racist or telling me I need to kill myself.
Wow.
And I'm not joking. Half the comments, all of them, like some of them were like, oh, this guy seems pretty cool. I'll check him out. And that was positive. And then the other half, everyone, it was something racist or someone just telling me this guy needs to just kill himself. Jump off a bridge right now. Just go ahead and commit suicide in the most graphic details possible.
Wow.
So as I said, I'm lucky. Outside of my bubble, it's not easy for a lot of people. Again, I know a lot of YouTubers out there or other people out there who have it very rough. And most of them get through it just by not paying attention. They just tune it out. And I said, you know what, maybe that's time for me to, especially considering it's been a rough couple of months for everybody, people a little more ornery. And also, I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. It was, now because the channel's grown, there's so many comments out there, and I just couldn't keep up with all of them. Right. I would sit down for hours, no joke, hours, just responding to everybody.
I mean, with 30,000 plus people following a YouTube page and everybody watching your videos every week, because I'm looking at some of your videos, dude, have like 8,000 views on them. Like, man, I can't wait till I get to 8,000 listens here on the Tristan Law Show, because we're still brand new and listening.
Yeah, and that's now for me. That's like one of the lower ends. So I did one about Jim Crockett Promotions,
yes,
the history of Jim Crockett Promotions, and that's like around 50,000 views, and I have ones bigger than that. So it's just crazy.
Think about this for a second: 50,000 views. That's like somebody in a building for WrestleMania and everybody watching that video at least one time. Think about that when you really put it into perspective like that. 50,000 people, that's one person in Giant Stadium, fully packed, watching one of your videos one time. Dude, you're over. You're over.
I never even thought about it that way, but yeah, that's amazing when you think when you look at it from that context. Yeah,
right, because you think 8,000 people. 8,000 people is a small arena. Maybe the Poughkeepsie Mid-Hudson Civic Center, a small arena like that. So you filled arenas with things like that. Damn, bro, you're over. I don't care what nobody tells me. You're over with me.
And my most popular video, which is nuts, is 260,000. So yeah, that's even nuttier.
Right, WrestleMania's never seen that many people in the building at one time.
Yeah, well, unless you put it in that context, I never thought about it that way. But thanks.
So for people out there that want to go ahead and create their own YouTube channels,
yeah,
why should or shouldn't a potential content creator go out and buy the most expensive equipment to start their YouTube channel?
That's a good question. There's multiple parts of this. Number one, if you're going to be like a film dude or you get really into camera gear and all that, you can accidentally fall into the into the trap of being too much of a gearhead. And you can be too much of a gearhead where, oh, I want to do this. Oh, but I can't do it until I get this and this camera. Then you buy this and this camera. And meanwhile, the camera is the thing that will depreciate the fastest. And also, for a lot of people, the phone will do just fine. And they'll say, oh man, now the new camera came out. You know what? I'll wait till I save enough money to get this. Or, hey, I don't have the right microphone, or I don't have the right lighting. I don't have the right setup. I don't have the right computer. I don't have the right blah, 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 blah. So don't be obsessed with gear. Good gear is good, but it doesn't make the content any better. You could have an 8K red camera, but if your content is it ain't, you can put polish on the turd all you want. It ain't going to change it. It's still a turd at the end of the day. So don't be obsessed with gear. Do what you can with what you have where you are. I believe that was Teddy Roosevelt who said that. Of course, that doesn't mean shoot with a potato. As I said, most phones are perfectly adequate at doing the job. And if you look at a lot of my older stuff, it's not the best looking. I didn't know 100% what I was doing. I also will be the first to admit I made plenty of mistakes. There are plenty of issues that I have with it, but you learn as you go. If you wait till the situation is perfect, you're never going to get there because perfection arguably does not even exist. So it's the idea, it's the pursuit of perfection that means more than actually achieving it, in my opinion. So I'll say don't get obsessed with gear. That's the biggest mistake. But two, at the same hand, go when you're ready. And I don't mean equipment. I mean, know when you can commit to making a bunch of videos on a weekly schedule or stockpile a bunch of them for a rainy day. That way you're on schedule. I know one dude that I've collaborated with, V Infuso. He does his stuff months in advance. I don't have that judicious of a schedule, but still, it's one of those things to make sure that when you're ready to go, because it's about consistency, remember, it's about turning out content every week or more than once a week, but know when you're ready to do this, that you're ready to do this. Don't sit there and because that hype is going to wear off. You're going to be really excited to do like your first 3, your first 5, and then it's going to fall flat. But that's not the time to back off. That's the time to hit it harder because that shows what you're made of. Are you only capable of putting your all into something when it's new and exciting and fresh? Or are you going to continue when you have to? That's the difference between a professional and a kid with a bright new shiny toy. That's the difference.
Does the person that is trying to create their YouTube channel, do they have to be any kind of fancy person when it comes to editing video?
You should know the foundations, in my opinion, but I don't think you need to as much because, as I just said, do what you can with what you have where you are. I don't remember the young lady's name, but there's a young lady who created a style of, they say her editing style, because what she does is she has a lot of crash zooms. It's from the phone. And for her expressions on her videos, let's say she's going to be shocked, she'll just cut real deep. See, for me, I'm that kind of nerd. Before I did this, I researched everything. I researched a bunch of videos that were in genres that had nothing to do with what I was interested in. But I was just wanting to see what other people do to get ideas and to see what works and what didn't. So for me, she cuts a lot of these things, crash zooms. Now, technically speaking, she's just taking the image, zooming all the way, blowing it up on the screen, not zooming in, but she's just enhancing, making it larger to zoom in on her face to show her expressions. And when you zoom in that much, it looks grainy. It looks gritty because I think she's filming on her phone. But again, I didn't research too hard, so I'm not 100%. But it looks grainy. It looks gritty. It doesn't look as sharp. Now, by a technical standpoint, that's technically wrong. But it works to convey her message of her emotion, and it gets a laugh out of her audience. They look forward to that. So despite that there are technical reasons why you should or should not do it, it works for her. So when you ask, should you be like a technical guru, knowing the basics, knowing the foundations, they're good. And aside from that, I also want to point out that from my understanding, again, I don't know her or really know that much about her, but I do understand that she is very capable and she knows what she's dealing with cameras and everything. I don't want to make it sound like she doesn't, but she did things. I'm just trying to say she was creative enough to take her expertise and her know-how, and on top of that, do other things that technically may be considered wrong, but she just ran with it anyway. And so, while, yeah, a foundation is good, but sometimes you can break the mold. And occasionally there are amateurs out there who may not know what they're doing 100%. You should know at least the basics, but they're going to come out there and do things that other people wouldn't do, and it turns out better. Side note, or a side example, Batman the Animated Series. A lot of people like that show, very popular cartoon. They drew the backgrounds on black paper. They said to make it have that dark, gritty feel, instead of using white paper and adding darkness, how about we add darkness and add the light to make it look darker?
Huh.
That's a technical no. Well, it's a technical no-no. Nobody in animation at that point in time would say, wait, you're drawing on black paper? What is wrong with you? That's wrong. It's white paper. Everyone knows that's how you draw.
Right.
But they took a gamble on it. And they said that it was because now Bruce Timm and Eric Radomski, the two guys behind the creation of that show, they worked on animation beforehand, but they were still young. So yes, they had their basis, but still they said, yeah, we're going to come up with this cool idea. We're going to do this and all that. And they've admitted that when they got older, they're like, if it was now, we never would think to do that. But back then, when you're young, you should just try all kinds of things. And I thought it was great, and it works out great. So don't think that you need to have a high level of expertise. Just the groundwork, just the minimum will get you through. Just know enough so you don't blow up your computer or destroy a perfectly good camera or phone. But then beyond that, learn as you go. I think sometimes it produces your best work when it's something that you don't 100% know how to do, but you still want to do it. You might find a better way.
So talking about learn as you go, how did you learn how to edit video? Because I've watched you edit a video like in real time, and I've watched you set up camera shoots. You actually recorded me. Like, how did you learn all the stuff that you learned about video and editing?
Well, a lot of it, of course, the foundation that I got was from going to broadcasting school. That was a big part of it. But the bulk of it, to do things the way I do them, I learned from just myself, from doing YouTube. Because the way I edit is completely different from the person who taught me. And the person who taught me, great guy, great editor. We wound up teaching together, and he would tell everybody, it's like, he knows we do things differently, and he doesn't care that I broke off and found my own way of doing it.
Right.
And the example we would give, we would say that if you came to us, both of us individually, gave us the same footage, the same tools, and asked for the same result in the same amount of time, we would both do it, but we would just take in two completely different roads to get there. It would come out exactly the same, but me and him wouldn't have done it the same way in any way, shape, or form. But we would do it. And that's the cool thing about that technical side. So a lot of things I just picked up what works best for me, how it's easier for me. I set things up the way I want it. So a lot of it was just learn by doing. I just kept on doing. I just kept on grinding, and I figured out how to make my life easier, because that's always the goal. How do I make my life easier? How do I make this process easier?
Okay,
so that's what I would say to that.
So talking about making the process easier, because I'm sure by now you're up to a process to where you feel it's easier. Dave, how do you manage to continually find time to produce so much content on your level of frequency?
Well, that's over the past couple of months. I mean, because of everything that happened, I lost a lot of. I don't have the studio anymore, so I had to refigure out how to do everything. So now it's much harder to make content than it used to be for me. I don't have a lot of advantages that I used to have with the studio. So it's a weird question now, because it's really, I reset the drawing board. The videos I put out recently don't look anything like they used to. I made my life easier because I used to use a green screen, take that out. Now I got rid of that, so it's just one less step. Audio setup and everything. I've started accumulating equipment, but during the past couple of months, it's things that nobody would care about, but I found things to make my channel a little bit better. I was able, and especially with limited resources, and it's funny, what cracks me up is that people ask me about, oh, look at the production value going up, not realizing it's really not. I was like, this is stuff I had lying around the house, and I just figured out ways to use it differently.
Right.
It's like I just recently bought what's known as a China ball. It's a paper round ball that you put over a light. They're cheap. They cost like nothing. You find them at IKEA and all the time.
Yes.
If you put them, I have clamp lights. I'm a big clamp light guy. I've always had a bunch. I've always had a bunch of clamp lights, which are like $15. You buy them. I used to work in a hardware store, so I had a bunch of them, and I just put the China ball around that, and it creates a big. It makes the light bigger, but it also diffuses it a little bit, so it's not as harsh. It's a little softer. Right. So people look at it and are like, "Oh, he's going crazy with the light." It's not really. It It's not as expensive as you think it is. It's just like a combination of repurposing things you already have and figuring out how to use them better. But that's a very old film trick. A lot of people have done that. So, but that's what it's about. Just using the stuff you have lying around. I happen to have a camera lying around. So right now it's just about refiguring out how to make that easier again. Because I was able to point out content. I was putting out like 2-3 videos like a week a little over a year ago. And then now I did 2 this week, but I got lucky. Usually I've been doing 1 a week. So it's no matter what setback you have, figure out again what you got to do. Because in the end of the day, the way I look at it, because I don't have a staff, I don't have a team, it's just me.
Right.
So I look at it that I know nobody's going to help me in the end. In the end of the day, I can only count on myself. No matter what hits, find. It's as Rocky Balboa said, it's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
So I like the example that you gave in there with the clamp lights and the China balls. And listeners, if you can't figure out the China balls, they're like these big paper balls that you hang over lights, and sometimes they have shapes in them and different stuff like that. Yeah. But Dave, that was a really good example that you were giving of how somebody right now listening to the Tristan Law Show could say, hey, you know what? I've always wanted to start my own YouTube channel. I don't know where to start. So you've already told me so far, if I want to start my own YouTube channel, all I need is my cell phone, and I can go to the hardware store and buy 2 $15 lights, clamp lights for $30, and then I'm good to go.
Hey, you don't even need to do that. You can you open the shade sometimes. The sun is an incredible resource. There are going to be technical things wrong with it, for sure, or things that you're going to have to work around. It just depends on what your setup is. For me, because when I said it's harder for me now, one of the major reasons is because I do such a research-heavy show, and there's a lot of facts and figures and things I can't just talk on the fly. I have to get these things right, or at least I want to get them as right as possible. I need a script. So without the studio, I no longer have a teleprompter.
Oh.
So a lot of this is now me just reading back and forth from a computer screen and then looking at the camera and trying to memorize it line by line.
Right.
Which takes way longer. But because of that, I need a computer in front of me. But let's say you weren't doing that. Let's say you were just rattling off on the top of your head and just talking. You could open up the shade and just let the natural light in. Don't be too close to the window because that'll be hot. And make sure that the camera is not facing the window. That's a rookie mistake. Just make sure it's pointing at you, but you're facing the window. That way the light from the window comes in and illuminates your face, and the camera's pointing at your face. Do it the other way around, the camera's going to be paying attention to the window. But those are little things you could do. And if the light is too hot, yeah, you can probably makeshift some things. A popular thing to do is take a sheet, like a bed sheet, a big one, or a shower curtain, and you could hang that in front of your window to lessen the light so it's not as harsh. Point is, there are ways to get around any limitation you possibly have. The only limitation you have is yourself. If you really want to do it, you can do it with very little money, very little to no money, with just the stuff you already have lying around. So that's something else I would say. So I would say you don't even need the clamp lights. It's just what happened. It's just for my particular setup, it worked out for me.
Fair. While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristan Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick time out to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristan Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. Dave, you launched your YouTube channel, Dave Knows Wrestling, in June 2016. Take us on the road to 30,000 subscribers. How did you get there, and how did it benefit you?
I have no idea. They said it from the beginning, and I knew it from the beginning, but they say your first 100 is harder than your first 1,000, and your first 1,000 is harder than your first 10,000. And it's true. It's what everybody says, and they're all right. It's because I remember when everyone told me that, and I heard that. I heard it, I processed it, I knew it. All right, I heard it. But the first video launched. I launched 3 the same day because I wanted to start with a bang. So I didn't want just one lonely video on the channel.
Right.
So I wanted 3. And within, seconds, I had my first subscriber. As soon as I launched it.
Really?
It was just one kid. He was like this young 13-year-old kid. And he talked to me right off the bat. He's like, wow, I love this channel. This is awesome, man. How do you do all the cool stuff? I want to be a YouTuber too. Your banner looks so cool, like your YouTube banner. Can I get, how'd you make it? I said, And because back then you could message YouTubers, you could have a direct message. You can't, I don't think you can do that anymore, but back then you could. And so I said, you know what, kid, as my first subscriber, I will make you a banner myself. And so I went out of my way and I made him banner. And then he said, thank you. You know, I had this one for a whole week. Can you make me another one? And my friend Eric really wants one too, or whatever the kid's name was. And I'm like, so I made it. I'm like, okay, but after this, I'm done. And then so when it happened right out the way, it was like within seconds, I was like, first 100 million hearts, but it still took a long time. And then before I knew it, I eventually got there. I don't have a time. I don't remember when these things happened. But then once 1,000 happened, and then I remember one summer, I think it was like within the first year or so. I don't. Maybe it was that summer. I'm not sure. I really don't remember, but I just remember it was summertime because I was working on a movie that day, and I remember just checking my phone because I used to check, and that day it just went up by thousands. Every time I checked, I was just going up by another couple hundred. So just one day it went banana sandwiches and just started up and up and up and up and up. And I have no idea what spawned it. I had no idea what happened. One of the biggest things that helped me, though, was one of my early videos was about chain wrestling. And it was something that I'm a big fan of. If you know me about wrestling, I'm a big fan of chain wrestling. I said, why don't more people talk about this? So I made a video about it, and I said, here's an interesting way you can watch a professional wrestling match that you might not have thought to watch one before. And that got reshared on some other video, on some website, some wrestling website, where some guy says, see, this is what I'm talking about. So I just read it. I didn't know him. He goes, this is something for all you fools out there to learn something about chain wrestling. Now pay attention to this. I didn't know him. I didn't realize he put me over, but that was one of my first videos that really blew up for the time. It got over 100 with like in no time. I didn't know why. And then I found out because this one guy shared it. And then you start realizing that you need help from other people. The more you can work with other people, the better you go. And that would be the next major pivotal point. I started getting a momentum. In the beginning, I reached out to every wrestling YouTuber I could that I watched, that I liked. I said, hey, I'm a fan of your stuff. I started my own channel. Would you check this out? So in the beginning, Ollie Davis from Wrestle Talk, can't be a big enough fan of his. I've mentioned this before. He interacted with me, and this was right around the beginning of Wrestle Talk 2 when Ollie Davis took over, and he goes, great stuff. He gave me a couple of pointers. He goes, you should do this, try this, and all that. And a lot of subscribers there said, hey, I saw your interaction with Ollie Davis, so I thought I'd check you out. Good stuff. So I had a huge British fan base in the beginning. I still do. I have a lot of British fans.
That's amazing. That's cool.
Yeah. And then, so that happened. And then the other thing that happened was a little bit down the line, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret. He said, dude, I want you to come onto my channel. I want you to do a collab with you. I think you're awesome. Good work. And let's figure something out. And he was he's in a whole nother stratosphere than me. And the fact that he saw promise in me, this young up and coming YouTuber, well, all right, maybe not young, but the channel was young. And he decided that to take a chance on me, that was huge. And that's when a lot of people started showing up too. So after that, people start showing up. Then I started collaborating with other guys like the Infuso, Kristen Miracle, a lot of other guys on YouTube I started doing things with. Brian Zane also had me featured on a big collab with with not only the guys from Wrestle Talk, but also the guys from What Culture, the guys from Cult, and everything a bunch of these other guys, all on the same channel. And that was all thanks to Brian Zane. So he did a lot of favors for me, and I definitely owe both him and Ollie Davis a lot, and so on and so forth. And also Frisco Flame, great guy who works with Brian Zane. I can't not mention him. So it was a lot of people who see the promise in you, and take the time to get to know you. That gets you the exposure. So as I said, it's been a wild journey. I can't pinpoint any one thing, but there's been other factors too. But in a nutshell, those would be the biggest things, I would say.
So, Dave, does YouTube treat people differently? When I mean people, I mean the content creators. Do they treat the content creators differently if you have X amount of fans? Do you get any special perks or anything like that?
Yes. Now, it's different now than when I started. But now you need over 1,000 subscribers, if I'm not mistaken, to do what's called monetizing, where you can make money off your content. But because when I started, you were able to monetize right away. Right. And I've been over 1,000 for a while. So like for years, because that rule, when they made that rule, it didn't affect me whatsoever. So I didn't really care. So that's why I said, from the best of my understanding, I think you need over 1,000 now. I remember they made that change, but because it didn't really affect me, I didn't care. So that's one thing that you get. You also, the more content you make, the more subscribers you have, they start entrusting you with more things, because that's kind of how they use as a test. Now, any fool can just throw up one video. That doesn't mean they can trust you. They need to know when you talk to advertisers, because they also want to know, is this graphic content? Is this made for children? Are you cursing in it? Stuff like that.
Right.
So when you find those things out, it's like, okay, this guy says he's not cursing. Let's see if he puts out certain content. Oh, wait, no, he does curse in this. Let's back off. So once you start growing and they can rely on you consistently, then they'll trust you enough to say, here you go, we'll do this, and so on and so forth. So yes, you do definitely get perks as you move up.
Dave, why is it important for watchers of YouTube or even podcast listeners to like or share what they've heard and to subscribe to the content?
All about that algorithm again, baby. That algorithm that's very, very advanced. A lot of things go into it. So the more people like, now I actually had somebody talk about this in a live stream with me. Some young kid told me that they thumbs down things even if they like it, but just because they don't want to see anything else like it again. They're like, I like this video, but if I don't want to see anything else about this topic, I don't want to be flooded with it, so they'll dislike it. They'll unlike it or dislike the comment, the video. But meanwhile, that's terrible. I was like, he told me, he goes, I do that. Is that normal? I'm like, no, don't do that. That is terrible for the channel. He goes, oh, my bad. I didn't know. It's like, all right, well, we'll do it again. I apologize. Because there's actually, you can click on the video and say not interested in it. Don't dislike it. Just click not interested if you don't want to see anything else like it on the recommendations page. But anyway, the likes are good because it lets YouTube know that you're turning out good content and will be more likely to recommend you. The subscribing is good because that way you know when you can set notifications, you know when someone's coming out, it will pop up on your subscription feed. And it's all about getting people to know when your content is out so they don't miss anything. You're not subscribed, new video comes out, maybe you'll see it, maybe you won't.
Right.
Subscribing gives you the option that you can go to your subscriptions tab and see new content from everybody you're subscribed to. Notifications is important because it's a business and there's rules about ads. So at this point in time, again, things change, but when it comes to ads, that's what you get. You make money off of how much people see your ads, how many people watch ads on your video. But they don't bombard you with ads. Sometimes there's a whole separate algorithm on that. But if I watch a video with an ad on it, a short video with an ad on it, then I watch another video. I just recently watched an ad. YouTube's not going to probably not hit me up with another one, unless of course it's built into the video. Mm-hmm. So we want you to set your notification. That way, my video is the first video you watch and not someone else's who had the ad. You want to watch my video first with the ad. So that's kind of the goal of why notifications are important, as well as letting you know that, hey, I have a new video. It's hoping that you will click on me right now, and therefore this will be the first video you're watching in a while, and therefore the ad will pop up and I'll get the ad. And so these are why you want these things. And plus, subscriber count is not the biggest thing. Views are what you want, because the more views, the more likely you are to see ads. But the subscriber base is just an indication. So, and in my case, I make being a subscriber count by making sure that I have, as I talked about earlier, the Know It All Nation, building a community. Sure, some channels, perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. Just have subscriber count and that's cool. But I try to cultivate more of a community that people are going to. So like my live streamers, I see a lot of familiar names there. You know everybody, you know what's going on. It's like, oh, hey, how's the wife? Oh, hey, you planning the wedding? And you kind of know these guys by now. And so that's another thing of why I like the subscriber and sending the notifications and the fan bases and talking to them. So that's for me. Again, other people don't do that, but for me, I do.
You see, Dave, I respect the hustle that you do on YouTube. And because I'm your friend, and I always tell people that if you're my friend, I'm going to support you through and through when you're doing something to help better the world. And Dave, I'm just going to let this be known, and I don't think I've ever told you this before. You're the only person because I watch a lot of YouTube, I don't watch regular live TV unless it's pro wrestling. I watch a lot of YouTube. And out of all the stuff that I watch, you're the only channel that I watch where I watch all of the commercial. Sometimes I find an 8-minute commercial. I'm like, oh, let me go do something real quick and come back, because I know that you get paid for the commercials. But the other thing I started doing as well too is, out of respect for you and for other YouTubers out there, I will give, if I like your video, I'm giving you a thumbs up. Or if I feel like it's not clickbait, I give it a thumbs up. Because like I tell people during this show, if you're on Apple iTunes or wherever you listen, if you have the ability to give me 5 stars or give me thumbs up, go ahead and give me that, because it lets my people know that we're doing a great job, and it lets that podcasting platform that you're listening in on know that you really like what you heard. So it's really important for people to like and subscribe and to share and all those other cool things that you said going on. But Dave, I'm going to get into the next question, and I'm not going to do it in a cutesy way, so I'll flat out ask you, why is YouTube the best place for a person to upload visual media?
Well, I look at it this way. YouTube very much prides itself on being not everyone thinks about it this way, but YouTube is a social media platform. A lot of people think social media, they think Facebook, they think Twitter. YouTube is social media, and people should think of it this way. So let's put it like this. You could tweet all you want. Twitter ain't gonna pay you, right?
You're right.
And not only is, and let's put money aside, because let's just put that aside. So YouTube's got that going for it, but let's put that aside.
Right.
As I mentioned earlier, it is as far as I know, and last time I checked, or what was told to me, is that YouTube is the #1 search engine in the world, above even Google itself. So that's the biggest platform. And on top of that, one thing I have noticed, and no, I don't know the inner workings of Facebook or Instagram or anything else like that, so maybe they do it too, but from what I know about YouTube, YouTube is the one major platform that is continually asking itself, can we do better? We'll try this. We'll change the algorithm. We'll listen to what our content creators are doing and what makes them happy. They have an issue with this. They're not getting paid enough. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. This interface isn't easy for its users to operate. They try over and over and over again. You express your concerns with YouTube, they answer them. They may not get to you right away. Maybe they are talking to the masses. Maybe it takes more people to talk about things. But from my experience, they want to hear what their content creators, because they do value you, in my opinion. So while, again, maybe Facebook does this, I don't know. Maybe Facebook Live and all that stuff does it. But I know people who've had thousands of views on Facebook Live or whatever like that, but they didn't make no money off of it.
Right.
And yeah, I know some people had bad things to say about YouTube, but as I said, for me, they show nothing but support, and they show that they are constantly trying to improve. They don't say they want to do better and then do nothing. When they say they want to do better, they will. And they are always trying to do better. So for me, I can't ask for more than that.
So take us through the process of creating one of your episodes for your Dave Knows Wrestling channel on YouTube. How do you come up with the motive, with the basis of the episode, and how do you come up with what you're going to say and everything else like that? What goes into creating one of your episodes?
Great question. Right now, I've done this thing for my Patreon. So over on Patreon, if you support the channel through Patreon, I looked at it this way. If you are supporting me on Patreon, Dave Knows Wrestling over on Patreon, you are a producer for all. You are an investor in the channel.
Okay.
By all rights, you're a producer. You're investing in this content. So I looked at it this way. Do you not then therefore have the right to talk about what kind of content you see as a contributing investor of this product? So I have Patreon polls out there where I will throw options out there of, what do you want to see? 3 different tier levels, $5, $10, and $15. The higher the tier level, the more specific it gets.
Right.
And then it says, what do you want from this? And based off of the votes, whichever one's the polls, that starts dictating the beginning videos of what I'll start doing. So last month, Jim Crockett Promotions was the one that won the Patreon poll last month. That's why I did the history of Jim Crockett Promotions.
Right.
So first order of business, looking at the Patreon polls, what did the Patreons want? That's what I'll go to. Second part of it is, and I can't believe it hasn't happened, but I always look at it that some idea will pop into me. Conversation, something of what I wanted to do. I've had a lot of back catalog episodes that I've always wanted to get to, and I eke it out through time. There has been, I look at it that I take you on a journey.
Right.
there has been a steady path. It's not for every episode, but there's an overall arching point. I start off with chain wrestling because I think not enough people know what that is, and we'll get to that later. My series on British wrestling, I took you throughout time. I started in the very beginning, the Victorian era, Lord Admiral Montalvan's rules, way back then. And then I started moving forward. And I haven't even the last one was in the very beginning of the 80s. Didn't even move on to the next step. So all these things, there is a process that I look for. So one is the Patreons. Two is the journey that I've been crafting, where it's in order to understand this, talk about this, we should talk about this first, and so on and so forth, and going forward. And then another part of it is just ideas pop in my head, things pop up, whether it's something you see on Raw or SmackDown or AEW or whatever, you get ideas and then you go from there. So it's a combination of those three things. And then I sit down and write. I do research. I write out a full script. I know some people just take bullet points and then ad lib. Not me. I write out a full script. Nowadays, I set up my camera, my lighting. I record. Then I edit, and then I publish.
So from
these days, it's like down to the wire normally.
So from start to finish, Dave, from the time that you conceive the idea and say, yeah, I'm going to do this, till the time that it gets actually put up on YouTube, what's the time frame for you?
I have no idea. I've never clocked it, but writing the script takes a couple of hours. Editing takes, the rough cut of editing takes the longest because I spent hours upon hours. It takes about 1 hour to film, so that's the shortest part.
It takes an hour for you to film, but you're only putting out 8 minutes worth of content. What happens to the other 52 minutes of content? Like, why do you not just use all of it?
Again, because a lot of time nowadays I'm trying to memorize it. I just look over to my computer monitor, read a couple of lines, and try to memorize as much as I possibly can, and then move over and record. So a lot of that is just the back and forth time of me looking from screen to camera, from screen to camera, from screen to camera. So that's one. In the early days, because I remember there was one show early on, Mr. Direct, me and him, we used to do shows, and I would just cut out stuff to cherry pick the very best, keep it popping, because you always want to keep the guests, you always want to keep the viewer wanting more. But me and him, we could talk about wrestling forever. So I would take a half hour of just us rambling and slice it down. So in those cases, you want to give them just enough. So that's usually what happens. A cutting room floor, never to be seen again.
While everyone is working behind me to make the Tristan Law Show better, I wanted to take a quick timeout to ask you to subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, rate the Tristan Law Show 5 stars and leave a review. Now, let's get back to the show. Dave, you're an on-screen personality for Capital Wrestling, now known as Catalyst Wrestling. How did you become involved with that organization?
My man, Stephen James.
Shout out to Steve James from Hive Mind Radio.
Right. So yeah, Stephen James. When we met, me and Stephen James clicked right away. Like right away, we knew we got along. There was no mistaking that. And then when I found out he worked for, which is now Catalyst Wrestling, it started by him inviting me to a show, and just as a guest, just to see what was up. And then before you know it, I started meeting everybody, and it was surprising to me. Some people there knew who I was, which I was shocked by. Some of the boys in the back, some of the people who work behind the scenes, they knew me. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, I'm not, because this was years ago. But there were people who recognized me. And then so they brought me on board. They're like, well, clearly you like wrestling and you know production. So they brought me in. But yeah, it was all thanks to Stephen James bringing me down there. But yeah, I was shocked at how many people knew me. I was really surprised.
Was this before your big jump in YouTube followers, or after your big jump? So you can say, yeah, there was at least 15,000 people in the world that knew who you were.
I think that was surprisingly the right number. I think that was about where I was at the time. I'm not 100% sure. I really don't remember, but I think it was somewhere around there. So I wasn't in the very early stages. I know that, but it was shocking. But it was definitely not where I'm at now. But it was just shocking to me where a lot of wrestlers were actually putting over the channel too, and like promo they would put me over, which I thought was crazy.
So Dave, how did you become a wrestling fan?
My dad. My dad doesn't watch anymore, but when I was a kid, it was Hulkamania everywhere when I was a child. So my dad was a fan, and even though he doesn't really like the current product right now, or he got me into it, and so that's how I got into it. Yeah.
Well, Dave, why is WWE Hall of Famer Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels your favorite wrestler in the world?
For anyone who doesn't know me, he is being very sarcastic because Shawn Michaels is actually my least favorite wrestler to ever exist. Very funny. I've talked about this. I've gotten this so much on the channel because from day one, I made it clear I am not a Shawn Michaels fan. And one thing I love is when there are a lot of people who say, I thought I was the only one who didn't get why this guy was a big deal. Now I'm so glad to find someone else who can't stand him either. So that's one thing I will say. The Know It All Nation is a safe haven for anybody who has never figured out why Shawn Michaels was a big deal. So I'm prepared for this answer only because I've been asked this question a million times. So there's a lot of reasons, but I'll boil it down to these quick ones. Okay. Number one, not a professional behind the scenes. There's tons of stories about how he was definitely not a professional to work with. Number two, his style of wrestling does not jive for me. He doesn't do a lot of chain wrestling, doesn't do a lot of technical wrestling. The only times he ever gets that is when he's pulled out of him by guys like Bret Hart or Kurt Angle. So he's mostly a punch kick machine, which I don't like. And he occasionally does a moonsault and an inverted atomic drop. That's not enough for me. I desire more. Number three, not a money draw at all. Did not make money for this company. As a top champion, look at what happened. He gets the belt at WrestleMania 12, 1996. And then lo and behold, just a little bit afterwards, WCW takes over as the top company in the world. Never since WWF climbed to the top did they lose that spot until after Shawn Michaels became champion. Yes, there are other factors to it, but if you look at the math, it goes on for that. Because when did WWF get its top spot back? 2 years later, after Shawn Michaels drops the belt to Stone Cold Steve Austin. So all I got to say, and every champion in between there has proven they can make money more so than he has. Never does Shawn Michaels prove that he can draw a house. Jake the Snake Roberts even said the guy couldn't draw a house. So, and you look at other factors too. His house show attendance numbers, his television ratings, not the guy. So terrible draw. They put the belt on him when they shouldn't, especially when there were guys like Benoit and Eddie who had the belt taken off of him. A lot of people have mentioned that Eddie actually requested for the belt to be dropped. But still, my point of the matter is there are other champions out there who had the belt taken away from them for far less than him, but yet they stuck it out with him a lot for unknown reasons. And the curtain call, the screw job, all these unprofessional things, disrespecting a member of the United States Armed Forces. Sometimes some people tell the story that it was 15 Marines. Other people say it's 1. Some people say it's 0. Who knows how many? But nevertheless, that's not okay with me. I could go on and on and on, but I think I gave you enough reasons.
I felt like you kind of I tried to trigger you with that question, and I felt like you were triggering me, so I had to pull back. So, you know what? I'm not going to fall for your trap, Dave. We're going to move on because you know what? Now we know that Shawn Michaels is not your favorite wrestler in the world. Right. Who were your favorite wrestlers growing up when you were a kid and you were watching with your dad?
As I said, Hulk Hogan as a kid, it was Hulkamania. Bret was a big one for sure. Stone Cold Steve Austin is my favorite of all time. And before anybody gets cute, I am aware that during Austin's prime, he was just a punch kick machine. But before his neck injury, that was the kind of wrestling I liked. I loved the way he sold. I loved his smash mouth style offense and how he incorporated wrestling with that. Plus his work with Bret Hart, I think, speaks, and Ricky Steamboat, I think, speaks for itself and his actual capabilities. And again, he made money. I know it's debated, but as far as I'm concerned, Stone Cold Steve Austin is the biggest money draw of all time. Not box office draw. I specifically said money draw. So if there are any nerds listening out there and say, well, what about Jim Londos? That's box office. In terms of money, Jim Londos didn't have T-shirts, video games, or toys. So I'm talking, or pay-per-view or cable. So in terms of money, and you're like, well, that's not his fault. I didn't say it was. I said who made the most. As fast Eddie Felson said, the one who's the best is the one who has the most. And that's Stone Cold Steve Austin. You could argue Hulk Hogan, you could argue The Rock, but when you compile it all together, Hogan, Rock, John Cena. Stone Cold Steve Austin is easily, during his prime, was easily the best wrestler out of all. So I take the guy who made the most money and is the best wrestler. How do you not pick him as your number one favorite?
You know, Dave, I felt like you tried to trigger me again because we know each other real well. I am not going to fall for your trap. And
all I'm going to say, what would you rather watch? The guy who ended the Attitude Era with his reign of terror, Triple H? I mean, just look at the dumpster fire that became WWE when he started taking over.
You're trying me.
Versus the money handle.
Triple H is the greatest wrestler ever. The greatest wrestler. Oh, you see, you did it. Okay, Dave, so we're moving on. Dave, in your opinion, what is the most important thing in pro wrestling to you?
What is the most important thing in pro wrestling for me is, I would say, joy, actually being happy, which is a hard thing to do. There's been so many times in my life where professional wrestling made me happy. It doesn't right now, and I think that's bad. Part of it is on me. Part of it is that I'm going older. Part of me is that I've lived a whole lifetime of seeing things now, so it's kind of hard to shock me anymore. It's kind of hard to give me something new. But at the same hand, I'm also not going to pretend like some of the things in the business aren't necessarily going the way I need them to be, or to make me happy. I understand that business is not looking, WWE as a business or other professional wrestling companies as a business aren't looking to just make me happy. They're not putting on content for me. That's not the way it works. And I get that. But at the same time, there's certain things about the wrestling world that make life more difficult. There are professional wrestlers out there, independent wrestlers, breaking their necks for a hot dog and a handshake, doing fantastic work, doing tremendous work in ring abilities. And they're doing old school stuff, or they're doing new innovative things, but they're doing it in a way that feels familiar. There's people shifting things up. There are people who aren't just doing the typical cliche of independent wrestling, but yet we say things like, oh, it's indie wrestling style. Independent wrestling has no style. Anybody can be an independent wrestler. It's not just the Young Bucks, okay?
You're right.
And the misconception that, oh, Ring of Honor is independent wrestling. No, it's not. If you are signed to somebody, it's not by definition an independent company. But anyway, so things like that drive me crazy. So that's not me, that's the industry. And that is the fan base too. The fan base complaining about certain things when they don't really know what they're talking about. Overall, there's a lot of things going on that have hindered my enjoyment of professional wrestling lately. And I will also admit that part of it is on me, but I would say just pure enjoyment. That is the most important thing for me.
Who is Dave Lee?
Who is Dave Lee? Oh, this question sounds familiar. Doesn't it, buddy? Oh, wait, did I ask you that? Or
no?
Anyway, well, who is Dave Lee? Dave Lee is a guy who is eking every day the best he possibly can, just trying to figure out what to live in day to day, just trying to get a little bit of a piece of that pie, but he still wants the whole thing.
What's the next for your YouTube channel, Dave Knows Wrestling?
Well, hopefully everything goes back to normal or some semblance of normal soon. I would like to bring back some other content. I would like to do things that I haven't been able to do.
Like what?
I would like to, if you're a fan of the channel, and this doesn't work for everybody. Not everybody's a fan of the show, but one of the shows on the channel, the Monday Night Wrong, some people like it, some people hate it, and I get it. It's not for everybody, but I would like to get to do that more. We haven't been able to do it for a multitude of reasons, but it would be nice to get that. We have an episode written that we've just never filmed.
If you ever need somebody for that show, Dave, I would love to be on that show, because I was watching, like I said, I watched some of your older stuff. Granted, like, listeners, Dave and I are friends. I know Dave outside of this. Right. I know him personally. We've ate a couple White Castle burgers together, but that's
putting it generally.
A lot. We ate a shit ton of White Castle burgers, all right? And then we shit a ton. But I research everybody that comes onto the show because I want to be knowledgeable and have an idea of what goes on with you, so I can pull questions out of you and convey them to the people that are listening. But I went back, and I've never watched a Monday Night Raw until maybe earlier today before we started recording. And I'm like, golly, that is so funny. I would love to be in that, Dave. You don't have to answer now, but if there's ever any way that you could fit me in, even if I'm just like a homeless guy sitting in the back dressed up homeless, like, I want to be on that episode.
Well, we're going to need a place to film it in. We're going to need to be able to be around each other again without masks and like normal people. And there's a lot of things that I would need to happen, but I would like to get back to it. Because as I said, Elmer on the show actually wrote an episode. He wrote his first episode and we never got to film it because the timing could not have been worse. He picked like the worst possible time to finally write something. We have thought about it. We have thought about trying to film right now, but the time is just not right. And thank you for appreciating the show. As I said, it's not for everybody, and a lot of people glaze over it. But that was the kind of content that I wanted to make. But it was the hardest. It's one of, if not the hardest show on the entire channel to make. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a completely different editing skill set. And blah, 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 blah. And especially the animations, because I draw all the animations myself. When it cuts to like quick little animations, I drew that. The animated episode, there was an entirely animated episode. I did that. I drew it all myself. Such a pain to do. So a lot of the quick animations and things like that, or the entire animated episode, were very labor intensive. But I would definitely like to bring some of that back because there was a lot. And on Patreon, I am going to be bringing back. It's coming out this month. The Honest promos. I haven't done one of them in a while.
I hated those.
What's that?
I hated those.
Oh,
because
sorry, buddy.
Because you said something about Sasha Banks I didn't like.
But see, here's the thing. A year before that, I made a very positive Sasha Banks video, and that's why I thought it was okay.
Nope, that was the first one that I seen. And when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this guy Dave's an asshole. He thinks he knows everything.
Most people like that channel, like that show. And so the Patreons voted for that. It's coming back. So that's going to come back. I mostly make honest promos about wrestlers that I do like. A very small handful of wrestlers I don't like do I have them. The majority of them are all wrestlers I actually like myself.
The reason why I can tell from the honest promos to the Monday Night Wrong is that the difference is that for me, I'm a YouTube watcher. I'm a heavy YouTube watcher, and I like things that are longer than 8 minutes, so I can just put the remote down and just watch on my big screen. But for somebody that doesn't have much time and they're in a fast food environment and they just want to watch a quick video, I think that your honest promos or some of your other series like your dream matches, dude, you should bring back dream matches, but it could just be anybody. And I think that was really good how you did all the math to figure all that stuff out and the algorithms. I'm sure. And based on your groans and your grunts, you've only done 3 of those episodes in the past. Yes. In the past year, I can tell how much of a pain in the butt it is for you to do. But those are some really good episodes. I like those. I watched all 3 of them this morning. And I'm not telling you this because I'm your friend, because if I didn't like it, I wouldn't mention it.
Oh, no, I know. I definitely know that about you. I do appreciate your honesty. When I said the Monday Night Wrong is one of, if not the hardest show, well, the only competition it has is Dream Match. It's one of those two. Those are the 2 hardest shows by far to make. Monday Night Wrong, just from a production standpoint, is the hardest one to make. And again, you look for a lot of people who may not catch it, but they look at it and go, what's so hard about this? It's because it's more production heavy. And plus, relying on people other than myself is always impossible.
Yep.
But the Dream Match, because of the math involved, I guess I theoretically could do it with the resources, but I would print everything out, lay it down like a crazy conspiracy board, and I would start making connections and start doing things. It's so labor intensive. And one of the reasons I really backed off and stopped on it was because it started getting diminishing returns. The first episode did really, really well. And then people watched the next one last, Kurt Angle and Brett, and I was like, okay, maybe it's because these guys aren't as over. So third one, I'm like, Hogan and Austin, these guys are super over, and that one did even worse. And I was like, what just happened here? So it's about diminishing returns. I love the series too, a lot of work, but at the same hand, people don't seem as interested. Because I get people asking about Monday Night Wrong to this day. I get people saying, because we haven't done an episode it's been going on 2 years now. Mm-hmm. And I have people asking all the time, like, when are you going to do the show again? I want it back. I miss it so much. I can't believe it's been so long since we had it. And we've had current circumstances. Mostly what happened is the females have left. They move on to bigger and better things.
With Monday Night Wrong.
Yeah, Monday Night Wrong. As I said, Danielle, she's a very talented actress. I knew this from day one that she was going to move on to bigger and better stuff. And so, of course, she started getting all the work. April moved. She moved away with her boyfriend. He got a job up there, and they had to go. And then Alexandra, she got pregnant, and so she had a baby. So she got pregnant, and then had to take care of the baby and all that stuff like that. So it's always the females. The guys, me, Derek, Brian, Elmer, we're always down. We're ready to go at all times. I actually started but they're ready to go. But just something always comes up. So that's the hardship with Monday Night Raw, especially since everybody's schedules don't line up. But Dream Match, so Dream Match I want to do, but Monday Night Raw, people ask about it all the time. And the funny thing is, people do ask about you. They ask about Steve. They ask about Albert. And they say, how come they're not in Monday Night Raw? So people do bring it up. Like, they do kind of want to see these guys out there, you guys out there, a little bit more in the show. Because it was originally conceived to be that, too. Like, Mr. Direct, who I mentioned, was part of the channel very early on, until he got his own studio, and then he just stopped needing to be around. Right. It was supposed to be conceived where it was a bunch of my friends just talking about wrestling, and instead I got, those guys are all my friends too, but instead it was supposed to be X, Y, and Z, and then it wound up becoming three completely different people, or a group of completely different people. So that's a hardship about that. And kayfabe signs, people want kayfabe signs back, but nobody asked for Dream Match. Nobody ever asked for Dream Match to come back.
Well, I'm the first person. Hey, you never know. Somebody watching, somebody listening to the Tristan Law Show may say, hey, you know what? Let me go check out Dave Knows Wrestling on YouTube or Dave Knows Comics on YouTube, but they might go to Dave Knows Wrestling and say, hey, you know what? I like Dream Matches too. But Dave, we all have to check out like we check in. This podcast and your YouTube channel will live way beyond us. What do you want your legacy to be after you're already gone?
You know, I have no idea. I don't even think about that kind of thing. I used to, but now I don't really think about it all that much. I used to say I wanted people to know, because I remember this. This is all the guys from Monday Night Raw. Well, most of the cast from Monday Night Raw, oddly enough. Speaking of which, tied back to that. We all did it. We all were part of a professional improv troupe in Manhattan for 2 years.
Yep.
And we actually came from community college when we did this. And we started together in a community college. And at the time, I wanted to leave a legacy that if you guys know, you can make it. If you guys are in this acting department, if you want to do improv comedy and get paid professional, make it in Manhattan, you could do it. You don't need anybody but yourself. You can make it happen. And I want to leave that legacy. Then 10 years went by. This was actually years ago, but 10 years went by, and I was invited back to the school, and nobody knew who I was. Not that I was expecting them to, but that showed me that I was like, legacies don't happen. Like, that would be nice if you could leave one, but that showed me, I'm like, it ain't gonna happen.
Right.
Or, I mean, it could. For some people, it definitely does, but not for me. So after that, I just stopped going, well, that's what I used to want. That's the legacy I used to want, is to show people that anybody could do it. If you want it, get it, period. But now I'm like, forget it. I'm like, I'm gonna stop setting the expectations so high.
Fair point, Dave. But hey, Dave, thank you so much for joining me today on my show, on the podcast, The Tristan Law Show. Dave, put yourself over. Tell everybody how they can find you on the social medias, because I'm sure after this they want to follow you and watch you.
Well, you can follow me at Dave Knows Things over on Twitter, but also please subscribe to Dave Knows Wrestling and Dave Knows Comics. And if you'd like, support me over on Patreon if you can during these trying times.
Hey, well, Dave, I appreciate you hanging out with me again here on the Tristan Law Show. I can't wait to see you in person, and I hope that you actually choose me to be on your Dave, Monday Night Wrong? I want to be on Monday Night Wrong, because if you're not right, you're wrong. But listeners, this was Dave Lee of Dave Knows Wrestling and Dave Knows Comics on YouTube. Be sure to check him out and give him a like, a subscribe, and you know what? Give him a share on your social media. But listeners, don't go anywhere, because when I get back, I'm going to give you some feedback on this interview, and I'm going to tell you who will be here next week on The Tristan Law Show. Hey, you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That shirt you're wearing is so not cool. Why don't you head on over to TristanLawShow.com and get yourself a new shirt? Not only will you be cool, but you'll also be supporting the show. What are you waiting for? Go now and get a hat too while you're at it. Thank me later. We're the show at TristanLawShow.com. Welcome back to the Tristan Law Show. Did you learn how to become a better YouTuber or how to launch a YouTube channel? These were genuine questions I personally want to know, and I hope you got a lot out of it too. Sound off on social media. Visit TristanLawShow.com for all of our social media contacts. And Dave, my friend, thank you very much for the time. Next week, I'm going to introduce you to pro wrestler Colossal Mike Law. Yes, he's my kayfabe cousin. If you don't know what that means, Google it. Mike and I talk about him wrestling in the Dominican Republic, how audiences there are different, and much, much more. I can't wait for you to hear this one. If you like this episode, I need a favor from you. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Share this on your favorite social media platform, and don't forget to tag myself or the show. Don't make this the thing that you do. Let's make this the thing that we do. You can also walk up to a random stranger and tell them to listen to the Tristan Law Show. Yeah, they may think you're crazy, but who cares what other people think? Fine. If you're worried about being judged, go on over to TristanLawShow.com and at least buy a t-shirt, because people will think that you're really, really cool. Rate the Tristan Law Show 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and leave a review, please. Reviews mean a lot. Whichever podcast platform you're using to listen, please subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. The best part is that it's free. Learn about myself and the Tristan Law Show by typing TristanLawShow.com in your internet-enabled device for more info. I'll be waiting for you next week. I'm Tristan Law. This is the Tristan Law Show. And until next time, adios.